The small village nestled deep in the forest was a place of beauty and tranquility. The villagers lived simple lives, tending their crops and hunting in the surrounding woods. They were a close-knit community, and they looked out for each other. But despite the peace and harmony of the village, there was a dark legend that hung over it like a shadow. The legend of the shadowed man. The villagers spoke of him in hushed whispers, for they feared that speaking his name aloud would summon him from the shadows. The shadowed man was said to be a vengeful spirit, a restless soul who had died in the forest many years ago and who now haunted the woods at night. According to legend, if you ever found yourself alone at night in the forest, you might catch a glimpse of the shadowed man lurking in the shadows. He was said to be a tall, dark figure who wore a cloak of shadows and had glowing eyes that pierced through the darkness. The shadowed man was said to take pleasure in tormenting and terrorizing anyone who crossed his path. He would appear suddenly and without warning, and then disappear just as quickly, leaving his victims shaken and terrified. The villagers were so afraid of the shadowed man that they would never venture out alone at night. They always traveled in groups and carried torches to ward off the darkness. One summer evening, a group of teenagers decided to camp out in the forest, despite the warnings of the villagers. They laughed and joked around, completely unaware of the danger that lay ahead. As night fell, the teenagers gathered around their campfire, roasting marshmallows and telling ghost stories. They tried to ignore the strange noises coming from the trees, but the noises grew louder and more sinister. Suddenly, a figure appeared in the darkness, looming over them like a dark cloud. It was the shadowed man. The teenagers screamed and ran, but the shadowed man pursued them, his footsteps echoing in the darkness. The forest seemed to come alive around them, with branches reaching out like grasping hands. One by one, the teenagers fell victim to the shadowed man. Some were never seen again, while others returned to the village with stories of terror and madness. The villagers were horrified by what had happened to the teenagers. They had always known that the shadowed man was real, but they had never thought he would actually attack anyone. The legend of the shadowed man lived on in the village, and parents used it to scare their children into behaving. No one ever dared to venture into the forest alone again, for fear of encountering the vengeful spirit of the shadowed man. Years passed, and the legend of the shadowed man faded into obscurity. But the villagers never forgot what had happened that fateful night in the forest, and they always made sure to stay together when they ventured out into the darkness. Despite their caution, however, there were still those who claimed to have seen the shadowed man lurking in the shadows of the forest. They spoke of his glowing eyes and his cloak of shadows, and the villagers knew that the legend of the shadowed man would never truly die.